And for some 6 or 7 weeks, witnesses testified for the government and witnesses testified for the defense. But along the way, the Commonwealth called the individual who had spent some 8 or 9 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit. And he testified and he was cross-examined. And ultimately the case went to the jury, and to make a long story short, there was a hung jury. And there was no verdict. The jury was split, guilt, innocence. But along the way, both the victim's family and the individual who had been convicted, wrongly convicted, had the opportunity to appear before a judge who conducted a courtroom in a professional manner, who was dignified, who was respectful, who was fair and decent, but not just the lawyers, but the witnesses, the man who had been previously wrongfully convicted. After the first case ended in a hung jury, there were a series of post-trial motions before the second trial began. And there were a series of very challenging legal issues that had to be resolved before the case was to be tried a second time. And over the course of several weeks, the lawyers argued in front of Judge Gants, and he made certain rulings on evidence. Ultimately, one of the rulings, based upon the facts, based on the law, was a favorable one for the Commonwealth. And with that, the defendant, the actual individual who had killed that innocent 18-year-old youth, stepped forward and, through his lawyer, ultimately decided that he wanted to plead guilty. And with that, the victim's family, the individual who some 10 or 11 years previously had sat through one trial and a second trial in which a wrong individual had been convicted, observed in a courtroom the actual true assailant brought to justice and plead guilty. I tell you that, Governor Murray, members of the council, not because it was a particularly successful case for the government, but because as the trial prosecutor in that case, in the end, justice was done. The system did work, and the system worked.